Hi, and welcome back to Lantai Toyota's long-form content. I showed TikTok how I lapped the valves and cleaned this head up, so I figured I'd use the other head on my V6 and show YouTube how to do it as well. Step one is to take this pretty pristine and prepped head and hide it underneath the bench and get out the ugly busted one. Ta-da! This is the passenger side head to my 4.3 Vortec. If you'll check out the B-roll, you can see that there's composite gasket all over the surface area. The valves are a little rusty and not clean, and it's overall not the way it should be being put back onto the engine. So the tools I'm going to be using to reinvigorate this head is going to be a razor blade scraper, a wire wheel cup, a rust removal Brillo pad disc, a set of thread chasers, a valve removal and replacement tool, a valve lapping tool, valve lapping compound, brake cleaner, assembly lube, a drill and/or an impact driver, a piece of sandpaper, rubber cement to adhere the sandpaper to a piece of glass. I'll explain why the glass is useful later. And some compressed air. Also a vacuum really helps. Okay, step one, of which I've kind of already done a little bit, is to take this cup wheel brush and clean out inside of the cylinder head. Now, the big thing with this is going to scratch the head. So do not get it on the mating surface. So all we're going to do with the wire cut brush is just put it in here, spin it like this, switch sides, reverse, spin it like that, cleaning up these corners and crevices and getting your valves remotely cleaned off. Step two, let's get all this junk off the head. So take your razor blade scraper and just start scraping. A big tip for when you're using a razor blade to scrape and clean a mating area is to make sure you're using a clean and new razor blade. When you start rolling edges over and getting gashes in this blade, you're going to start putting gashes in your cylinder head, which there's only so much sandpaper can save you. So I've used my scraper to scrape off all the junk off of this. And while I'm using the scraper with one hand, I like to use my other hand to run the vacuum nearby. That way you don't drop a bunch of junk inside all these oil ports and coolant ports. You'll notice there's still some spots with texture in them that'll get taken care of in our next step. It has been 2 weeks since I've filmed last because it has been so cold in this garage that I've not been able to muster the strength to come out here and work on this thing. Oklahoma got cold when I lived there. I moved to Texas. It was supposed to be warm. It has snowed more times in the 6 months that I've lived here than in the past few years that I've lived in Oklahoma. I want a refund. I will apologize really quick for the lighting. I know it sucks, but this is the only light I have. And I can see. You can't see great, but my vision is a little more important than the camera angles. Sorry. Okay, so we have scraped the head, and now we're going to go to step two, which is this rust removal wheel that I picked up from Walmart. Don't use a wire wheel. This thing's also pretty coarse. The best advice I can give with this is, wow, my battery still has battery in it. The best advice with this is very light pressure. Our goal here is to grind off some of the stuff that we were not really able to get off with the razor blade scraper. So very light pressure, moving this around. If you do scratch the head with this, it's not a big deal. The sandpaper should take most of it out and you can leave small scratches, right? Anything that you can't really feel with your finger, we're not worried about, right? So take this, go over the entire head with it. I will say this thing is going to tear itself apart slowly, so just keep in mind that you're going to get bits and chunks of stuff. Vacuum the crap out of your coolant ports and your oil ports in this thing and blow it out with compressed air, which I will do off camera because it's loud. But seriously, make sure you get all this junk because you can't see it, but there's little red bits all over the cylinder head. You got to clean that stuff out. Get this out of the way. And now we get to the fun part. Now we got to make sure that it is fully sanded and also flat. Now, how do you make sure you get something that's big, flat, and can sand this entire thing? Plate glass. This is a piece of glass that I went to my local Ace Hardware, had them cut to the size of the sandpaper, and then I just rubber cemented it to the glass. Don't mind the metric ton of painter's tape on the back. I cracked this in half and taped it back together. So I've got tension with the glue and paper and the tape on the backside. So hopefully it stays flat. Anyways, here's the fun part. You just start sanding. Remember, cross hatching. Every time you sand, you go cross hatching. No circles. Another important thing is when you're sanding stuff like this, let the sandpaper do the work. Don't put a shitload of pressure on it. Make your hand wide so that the pressure is even and spread out so you're not putting a hot spot on your glass so you don't break it. And then just nice even pressure, nice smooth gliding. If you put a lot of pressure on this, you're liable to break the glass or catch one of these corners, chip the edge of the glass, or catch one of the corners and tear the paper off, which I have done with the other piece of sandpaper I had on before this. While you're sanding this, without using like special dyes, you can see if your head is warped or if your block is warped. You're looking for a nice semi-uniform metal showing through, right? So this is going to be black or discolored from your old gasket. You're going to see that metal starting to come through, and you want a mostly even shade of that kind of iron color coming through, or aluminum if you're doing this on aluminum heads. Now, how do you know when you're done? The main thing to look for is when you stop seeing scratches, basically. You're going to see a little bit of scratches from your razor blade where the corners may be dug in, or maybe from that rust remover wheel. But your main thing is going to look and see when you get a good cross hatch, you're not really going to see like hard horizontal or hard vertical lines. It's kind of going to be just a dull finish. All right, so this is what we're looking for, this kind of semi-consistent silvery color. If you look, these are some darker spots that I can do a little more work on to get everything more evened out. There's a little bit here. Everything else looks pretty good. So coloration is a pretty good indicator of whether or not your heads are warped or not. But if you don't trust this, you can go get something like a straight edge, either a machined bar or like a big right angle. Kind of sort of something like this. You're going to lay it in a cross pattern, and you're going to look and see if there's light coming through. Stick a flashlight behind there and see if there's light coming underneath. That'll tell you if you're even. So you're going to go from here, then cross it over and go to here, and then you're going to go straight across, and you're just looking at these hot areas and making sure that there's not like light shining directly through them. Now that we've taken care of the mating surface, we're going to work on the intake manifold side. So to do that, we're going to repeat all the steps we just did, right? So take this razor blade, rust wheel, sand it. All right, now it's been sanded. We're not nearly as worried about like the surface finish on this side specifically. Just get it cleaned up, get her relatively smooth. All right, now we're going to do the exhaust side. The exhaust side, we're not going to waste our time scraping. This is going to use a really thick composite gasket. Just take the rust wheel and go after it. We don't care if this is rough. So now the exhaust side's done, and I'm going to take a thread chaser and chase all these threads to make sure they're all in good shape. And then after I do that, I am going to lap all the valves. So it's been a few weeks now that it's warm enough to open my garage door, because I'm not a huge fan of blasting blade. See, you can already see the brain damage coming into effect. I don't like blasting brake cleaner while my garage door is closed and I don't have any ventilation. So we're going to do the smart thing here. Have that open. I'll probably turn a fan on when I'm not recording. But we're going to start working on valves. How we're going to remove these valves, I have a universal valve removing tool. You can buy LS specific ones, but I'm not sure if the LS specific one works on the 4.3 Vortec because this is a small block Chevy based V6 and not an LS based V6. The way this works, this side goes to your valve, this side goes to your valve stem. Spin that down. I go underneath to make sure this is centered. Probably doesn't matter as much as I think it does, but I like doing it that way. Take this, crank it down until you see your keepers kind of loosen up a bit. Take a magnet, grab your keepers. Now I am not swapping valves, I'm just lapping these. Keep everything separate, remember where everything goes, label everything. Loosen this. I apologize for being left-handed, which means my arm is in the way the entire time. Take off your hat and spring, throw it in there, pull your valve. So the valves are all out, now we can flip the head over. Smells so good. I can feel my brain cells dying. Get you some compound, put it on your valve. Take some assembly lube first, actually. Put it on the tip so that it glides around the entire edge, if that makes any sense. Take valve tool. Not going to want to stick, so you got to give it the old, you got to spit on it. Make it stick a little bit better. I used to do these with those suction cup Nerf darts when I was a kid. So I do 2 twists, and then I reset it with a rotation. That's just to make sure I get everything even. Okay, so you've been spinning this thing for a while. How do you know when you're done? It's by sound, so you compare the sound at the beginning and compare that to the sound at the end. That should sound something like this. See how that sounds smoother and less gritty? That means you've ground down all that grinding compound and smoothed out all the metal and stuff that's inside the valve. Now that that's done, take this off, pull your valve out. Now you're going to spray your valve with brake cleaner over a bucket or something. Now you can see our valve has that gray streak of raw metal. That's what we're looking for. Set your valve aside and spray your valve seat. So I like to spray it a good amount, wipe it down with a paper towel, and then spray it again. That's one valve down. You just repeat that for the rest of these. Now that all the valves are done, we're going to install them all with some assembly lube, and then we're going to flip the head over. Now that the valves are lapped and ready to go, we're going to do everything in reverse and put our springs, hats, and keepers back in. Everything with assembly lube. Oh boy, I sure do love when my microphone dies and I totally forget that it died and then do a whole take of, concluding everything and there's no audio. So anyways, that's how I refurbish and revitalize the heads on my 4.3 Vortec. If you guys want to leave a comment, like it, I'd really appreciate it. If you want to critique me or think I did something funky, go ahead and leave a comment about it in the comments down below. Don't be a dick about it and have a good rest of your day.